Hi everybody, welcome. Tammy from Tammy's Homesteading Crafts. Today we are in the kitchen and we are going to do something that I have never done before. I am going to try to make some stock from bones that I had in the freezer. So if that is something that interests you, stick around. So before we get started with me making stock, I want to welcome all of you to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. For those of you who this might be the very first video that you're watching of mine, I hope you enjoy the content. We do a lot of different videos on this channel. We do some knitting videos, some sewing videos, gardening, preserving, cooking, and even a little bit of demonstration for different things and showing off with a knitted podcast that I do on this channel. So if you are interested, I hope you consider subscribing to my channel. I will also put down below all of the social media where you could find me on all social media and follow me there as well. Okay, so let's get into our tutorial for making, well, not really a tutorial, just what I'm doing for making my stock. Okay, so today's video we're doing, I'm going to make chicken stock for the very first time. I've never made this before. Our local Sam's Club here has rotisserie chickens for like $5. And every time I go there to do my shopping, I will grab one because it's a quick, easy dinner and I don't have to think about anything. I can just put some chicken on the plate with some mashed potatoes, a vegetable, and then we're good to go. And then there's a lot of meat left on the chicken that I'm able to have 3, possibly 4 meals after the fact with that chicken. But I've always just peeled everything off the bone and then I've just thrown the bones away. I've never considered taking the bones and cooking them and making stock or even soup or anything with them. I've just never thought about doing it. And last year I was thinking about it. I'm like, why am I throwing these bones away? I should be saving them and making stock with them. Well, when you get one chicken at a time, it's not beneficial to cook up one little chicken with bones to try to get stock from it. So I froze a couple of them, and yesterday when I was at Sam's Club, I decided that I was going to get a couple of chickens, and when I got home I was like, oh, okay, I'll freeze these bones and waiting. Well, then I remembered that I had froze 2 or 3 sets of bones previous. So I got them all out of the freezer and I decided that I was going to make some stock with them. So let me show you what I have done with my bones. I've got them in the pot already. I'm just going to throw in a couple of more vegetables, but I will show you what I'm doing. So let me flip you around. Okay, so here is my stock pot with my bones inside of it. With my chicken that I got, I do have some of the skin in there. I have not put a lot of seasoning in because I don't know what seasoning they used on the skin of the chicken. This is the first time I've done it, so I don't want to over season. So I'm just not going to put a ton of seasoning in. I did cut up an onion to put in, and I also have a carrot that I'm going to put in just for some flavoring to have into my broth. Let me switch hands here. Just cook that down in, push it down in, and let that cook. They don't, being that these are already cooked chicken, you don't have to get it up to a certain temp to boil for a long time. You just have to get it warm and let it simmer. I put it on like 4 or 5 to let it get a little bit warmer. It hasn't quite boiled yet. I'm going to let it bring to a boil and then I'm going to probably put it onto 2 and let it cook for 3 or 4 hours. I will probably put a little bit of salt and pepper in just for flavoring, just because I usually salt and pepper everything when I cook, but not a lot because I have no idea the spices and how much seasoning they had onto the skin of the chicken. So I'm just going to put this in the pot. It's in the pot. Put this the cover on the pot here and just let it simmer. It is starting to get to a boil there. It doesn't really need to be a full rolling boil. I just want to make sure it is up to temp, and then just turn it on to 1 or 2 with the cover and just let it cook most of the day. And then I will show you what I'm going to do after I let this cook. Strain it out and show you how much broth we have after we're done with this. It looks like it might be quite a flavorful broth, but we will see. Like I said, I'm going to let it cook down, let my onions soften, my carrots soften, so that I know that I got most of my flavor out of those for into the broth itself. And then I'll show you what's going on with it. So this is where it is. I've got it all. There's 3 or 4 bones in here, chicken bones in here. And then I put about a cup of carrots and then 2 onions that I just chopped up into pieces to put in here as well. And I covered the bones most of the way with water. I could cover them more. The more water I put in, the less flavorful my broth will be. It'll be more watery broth. So it depends on how you want your broth. Do you want a stiffer broth that you can dilute, or do you want a ready-to-use broth that you don't have to add any water to when you go to use it for soups or whatever you're going to use it for? So that's what you have to think about when you are doing your broth. How much ever water you put in, you're going to dilute the flavor of your broth. So I don't, like I said, this is the first time I've done anything, so probably after it cooks for a while, I'll taste it. If it's pretty strong and I want it ready to use, I can always add more water to it and let it simmer for a little bit longer. But yeah, I'm just going to push down. I might add a little bit more so that it does cover all of the bones. Some of the bones are already popping out of the water. But yeah, that's where we're at. Okay, my broth has been simmering here for right around 3 hours, and it looks pretty good. I've tasted it. It actually tastes pretty good. My onions are almost translucent. And I'm going to now take my strainer and I'm going to pull out my bones, put them over my strainer over another bowl so that all the liquid that's in them can drain out and I can get every inch of broth out of this. It'll allow the bones and any meat or anything that's there to cool. If there seems to be a lot of meat, I will pick the meat off and I will put the meat in the bottom of the jars when I can them so that I can have chicken stock with some meat in it when I go to make soups and stuff like that. I'll cut it up into small pieces so that I have it in the bottom of my bowl, in my pot, or my jars, if I have a lot of meat. If there's not that much meat, I'll just put it aside and I will, maybe make some chicken and biscuits with it if it's just enough to do like a 1 serving chicken and biscuits. We'll see what we're going to do with it. I've got to see how much actual meat there is that is in here, but I want to get that all out. I've turned it off. I want to let it cool down a little bit because I also am going to take it and run it through my fat separator to try to get as much of the fat off it as possible, because I did use the skins. I saved the skins and they were in here when I boiled because all of the seasoning from the rotisserie chicken seemed to be on the skins and I wanted to get as much flavor from that as possible. So I used that. So what I'm going to do now is just scoop out a bunch of the bones, put them in a strainer so that they can start to drain. And then I will get this off, let it cool down for a little bit, and then pick off what I have on the bones as far as meat, and I'll show you what I get. So I have it all separated out in the strainer to strain as much of the liquid out of it as possible. I have started picking the bones out. I've got some of the bones picked out. that's what I've got so far of chicken. I probably will finish picking out all the chicken, and there looks like there might be enough to put in the bottom, like a cup or half a cup in the bottom of each of my containers that I'm canning. Depends on how many jars I'm going to have, but this is what my stock looks like. You can see the shimmer on it, that there is still quite a bit of fat on that. I do have my fat separator that I'm going to pour stuff in, and then once you pour it in, you can just drain off once it settles. You pour it in, it'll settle, and then you can drain off everything but the fat and pour the fat off into another container. So I'm going to let this cool. The bones are still quite hot to be able to pick out. I got quite a bit of them picked out, but I'm going to pick out some more here. And then I'm just going to get it ready to process. I am not going to show you the whole steps of pressure canning. I will put the link in the description below for the video that I did on how to set everything up for the pressure canner. And I am just going to pressure can this. You do have to pressure can soups when you do them. They need to be 10 pounds of pressure. I believe quarts are 35 to 40 minutes. I will also link my ball canning book that I use for everything when I go to preserve all of my food, so that you guys know which book to get to. They're usually, this time of year, you can get them at Walmart in the canning aisle. They go rather quickly. They do update them on a regular basis and put new recipes in there and stuff like that, but mine's probably a good 10 years old. It has the recipes that I have. If I'm looking for something different, I'll usually just search on the internet for different kinds of recipes. But as far as, a handbook and how to can, I have my ball canning book jar there, or ball canning book there, and then also my extra thick one that I have with a whole bunch of other stuff in it. But yeah, other than that, just make sure that you pressure can your stuff if you're going to save it. You can also freeze it if you want to. The only thing is, with freezing, you have to remember to pull it out the night before and let it thaw gradually in the refrigerator before you decide to use it. If you're putting it in quart jars and putting it in the freezer. If you're putting it in a Ziploc bag in the freezer, you wouldn't have to worry about it. If you lay it flat, you can break off pieces of it. A lot of people will do that. They'll lay it flat in a Ziploc bag and put markers over it for like cups. So they will divide it into 4 cups so that when they pull it out of the freezer, they can easily break off a thing and have a cup of broth. If definitely before you can it, taste your broth. Make sure it's how you want it to taste. You can always season it when you are using your broth, but if it is a strong broth, you can know that, if it's really strong and I know I'm going to have to add water to it, and you only use a quart of broth, you can can it into pint jars so that you can add, and that's 2 cups, and then you can add 2 more cups of water to dilute it. If it is already the taste that you want, and you know you're going to use a quart of broth when you make anything, then go ahead and put it into your quart jars. That way, when you dump it in, you know you have exactly how much broth you need, and you can go from there. If you're putting the meat in, like I am going to, then you have a starter of a soup already where you already have some of the meat into it to start. But yeah, definitely make sure you taste it. I'm going to let this cool down so that it will separate a little bit easier. Not too cool, because if it's too cold, it'll already separate in the container, and it won't separate right through the separator. So I'm going to wait a little bit to do this, But while I'm doing that, waiting, I'm going to try to pick the bones out of and the carrots and the onions out of all of this. If I get a few onions left in the broth and the carrots, it's not such a bad deal. It's just flavoring to add to soups or whatever you're making with the broth, and you can always take them out at that time later. But that's my plan right now, just to try to make sure I get all of the bones out of here so that I don't have any bones in with my chicken. And then I will get my jars ready, prepared for pressure canning, and then I will can these today to get them done, and one thing closer to getting the freezer pantry shelves stocked for the winter. So I will show you how many I get when I get done. The best thing to use for picking the bones out of all of this meat and stuff is just your fingers, or possibly a fork or some tongs or something. You want to be able to make sure that you can feel the bones. Some of the bones are soft, and you're not going, with a fork, you'll feel the hardness of them, but with tongs, you might not feel the clinking of the bone that it would make when you are getting it out. But you just want to make sure that you get all of the bone and everything out. So like this was a really soft bone that it wouldn't make any noise with the tongs or a fork, but you're able to feel it when you pick it out with your hands. So just be careful. It's hot, but that's the best thing. Like these little bones here, these little bones here, they're very soft and pliable, and they look just like a piece of chicken, and it's actually those side bones there. But this allows you to get all the fat and everything off of the meat and go from there. So just make sure you take your time and get all the bones. You definitely do not want to serve soup and have little bones in it when you are doing that. So this is going to take the most time here, is to make sure that you get all of the cartilage and bones and everything out of your chicken. We actually got quite a bit of chicken out of those 3 or 4 chicken bones that I had there. Really mushed it up good, because I wanted to make sure there was no little tiny bones inside of any of that. So this will be divided by the number of jars that I'm going to get, and then I will go from there. But I just wanted to show you that's quite a bit of chicken off that was still on those bones. Even though you clean a lot of it off, there's still a lot that is in those bones that you don't pick off. So there's that. Now I'm going to start straining all of my broth. Okay, I got my broth in my separator, and you can see the line of fat that's at the top. As long as when you drain it, you don't let that go down the spout, you'll be good. Yeah, it pretty much floats right to the top automatically. It's cool enough now that that's where it's going. It's still warm, but it's not as warm. It's not boiling hot anymore like it was. So it's starting to congeal a little bit and settle close to the top. So I can get most of this done. I'd like to put it back on the burner so that I can get it rewarmed. It's got to be warm or hot, pretty hot when I put it into the jars for processing, because I've got to get them up to temp as well. So you're better off doing it all hot. So I will get this separated, get it back into the pot, let it start warming up, or get it warmer, and then also start getting the water for my in my pressure cooker up to temp, so that will start to be hot, so that when I put it all together, everything is the same temp, and I have no issues with a jar possibly cracking, because I'm putting hot liquid into cold water. I'm putting hot liquid into a hot jar and into a hot water. It'll all be okay. You have a lot less chance of things breaking or cracking when you're using the jars in the same temp. So I will get my jars washed, get them sitting into as hot a water as I can do here. A lot of people will put them in the oven to keep them warm so that the jars itself are not cold. But that's what I'm going to start doing. I will start dividing this. I'm going to put it in just this bowl that I was draining it into until I get it to the point that I can put it back in my pot. But other than that, that's what I plan on doing. I got 6 quarts of chicken stock with chicken in the pressure canner. Just going to put the lid on it and bring it up to temp so that it can start processing. Quarts need to process at 10 pounds of pressure for 35 minutes. So I'm going to get this going. Remember, I will link in the description below the video that I did working, showing how to use a pressure canner. Make sure you have a full stream of steam coming out your port for a good minute before you put the weight on, and then allow it to build up to pressure. That way you know the inside of the pressure canner is fully hot all the way through and it's leaving out its steam, and then it will definitely have a better chance of processing all of your jars. So I'm going to get this processed. I'll show you what they look like when I am done. Well, I was just reading the fall canning book and looking at different things, and it looks like when you are canning soup that has vegetables or meat in it, you need to process it for an hour and 25 minutes. If it was just the stock, whether it was vegetable stock, chicken stock, beef stock, you could do that for the 35 minutes, but since it has meat in it, in order for it to be pressure canned correctly, it needs to be pressure canned for an hour and 25 minutes. So correction on my earlier announcement that I was going to do it for 35 minutes, it will be for an hour and 25 minutes. Once it reaches 10 pounds of pressure, I will put my timer on for an hour and 25 minutes. But yeah, my bump has gone up. So now we are going to start building pressure in the pressure canner. Once I get it to my 10 pounds of pressure, I will, 10 pounds of pressure right there, I will start processing or start timing my process for an hour and 25 minutes. I'll let you know how it turns out. Well guys, that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed learning with me how to make chicken stock from rotisserie chickens that you get at the grocery store. So if you guys have not subscribed, consider doing so. It does benefit me by you subscribing to my channel. And that is it for today's video, and I will see you on the next one. Have a good day. Bye.